As video editors, we are well aware of the challenges involved in crafting a captivating visual narrative. It is a journey filled with hurdles, uncertainties and trade-offs. Personally, I have been color grading videos for 5 years now, and I've gone through this process numerous times. And I now know that figuring out how to do everything exactly right early on can help you improve much faster. My coloring process has undergone several improvements that have made me a much faster editor, and have also made my editing more enjoyable. So in this video, if you watch until the end, I will make sure that you know all the settings that make your work look good. These are the settings that have helped me enhance my overall workflow. Before we dive right in, let me quickly but strongly explain the theory that you will need to know as well. Davinci Resolve is a non-linear video editing software that provides advanced color correction tools and audio post-production features. It supports a wide range of video formats and resolutions, making it a popular choice among video editors. When you start a new project in Davinci Resolve, you will be asked to set the project settings such as resolution, frame rate and aspect ratio. And it's important to set these correctly, as changing them later can cause problems with the timeline and overall quality of the project. Once you've set the project settings, you can start importing your media files to the media pool. When it comes to exporting your video, there are a few settings you need to consider. Firstly, you need to select the correct video format and codec that is compatible with the platform you are uploading to. Secondly, you need to ensure that the resolution and frame rate are set correctly to maintain the quality of the video. Lastly, you need to set the bitrate, which determines the overall quality of the video. Davinci Resolve settings are crucial to achieving the desired outcome for your video project. Properly setting up your project in Davinci Resolve can save you time and prevent issues down the line. And some of the most important settings in Davinci Resolve include the project settings, timeline settings, and export settings. So we will discuss the important settings you need to know to get started with Davinci Resolve and how to export your video correctly. I will walk you through step by step on how to set the project settings, import the media, edit your footage, and export your final video. Let's get started. Let's set up Davinci Resolve itself and adjust the project in which we will continue our training. To do this, let's go to the settings of Davinci Resolve itself. On the top left, we see the name of the program. Click on it and find the references tab. So now let's look at everything in order. Tap memory and GPU. Here we adjust the characteristics of the video card, allocating a certain amount of memory for a particular task. Let's say for Davinci Resolve we've allocated 24 GB, and for Fusion we have allocated 18 GB. The only thing is, if you have several video cards, say one with 8 GB and another one with 4 GB for example, and Davinci Resolve usually uses the maximum memory of your weakest link, respectively 4 GB, in which case you can disable your weakest video card and leave preference to the more powerful one. In my case, I have one video card and we will leave everything by default. Then we have the media storage tab. In this tab you can configure the paths for your stills that you will create as you work, as well as your file cache. Leave everything here by default and go to the next. Now let's go over the decode options. If you are working with materials from RED cameras, in the item use GPU for RED, choose decompression and debayer. This will relieve the load from your processor and load your video card a little. Next we have video and audio I/O. In this case I have nothing here, but if your reference monitor will be connected through an output card, in this item you can choose your output card. For example, Ultra Studio HD Mini or Ultra Studio 4K Mini. Moving on, we have video plugins. In this menu we can turn on and off a particular plugin installed. In this case you can see that I have not loaded some of the plugins and I have them disabled. This can be very useful if you have several versions of the same plugin and you want to disable the old one. Then to do so, just turn off the checkbox and press save. Next we have audio plugins. This is similar to the previous step. Here we do not touch anything. Then in control panels, in my case, I do not have any control panel connected, but if you have, for example, Davinci Resolve Mini panel, we would choose it from this list. And if you want to get any panel connected, you can see in this list the panel models supported by the program. In the general tab, specifically for Mac users, you can pay attention to this item, use Mac display color profiles for viewers. Many Mac users most likely have faced or will face the problem when your exported video is not displayed the way you saw it in Davinci Resolve. In case of such problem, you can experiment by turning this option on and off. In my case it is turned on and it works fine with correct export settings. I will tell you more about this in the next video. I also recommend checking use 10-bit precision in viewers if available to get more accurate colors in your viewer. Further, let's go over internet accounts. In this menu you can connect your accounts, for example YouTube, Vimeo, Twitter, Dropbox or Frame.io. So you can, for example, upload preview videos directly to your YouTube or Vimeo channel and simply share that link with your client. The next step that we have is advanced. It is designed for writing scripts for Davinci Resolve. But for now, just do not touch anything here. Next, let's go to user. In this first menu, we have UI settings, where we have the opportunity to configure the program's interface. In this case, it is all set up perfectly, and we do not have to touch anything. Let's go to the next step, which is project save and load. This is where the most important settings are of Davinci Resolve. Live save and project backup should be enabled. So what does live save do? Let's imagine you are working and all of a sudden the lights go out. If you have activated the live save checkbox when you open the program after this problem, the project will remain in the form in which it was suddenly turned off, as the live save checkbox allows the program to remember the last state before the program is suddenly shut down. Also, project backups is the ability to save backups for your projects every 10 minutes, every 2 hours or every 2 days. Backups of your projects can be found in the project window when you right click on your project. Click on project backups and you get a list of all of the backups. By selecting a preferred certain amount of time, you can always get it back when you want. Further, in editing we are not engaged, and accordingly all these settings are left by default. In the color tab everything is set perfectly, and I recommend leaving everything here by default. Fairlight also doesn't work with sound, and we don't touch anything here. In the playback settings there is an interesting menu called performance mode, which is on automatic by default. So what does this function do? When your video is paused, it is displayed on your monitor at a certain quality. Then when you press space, aka the play button, the program optimizes the video to not burden your system. The video will be a little bit worse, and it also greatly affects the color. We do not need this, and accordingly we turn off this function. Here we have the settings for our panel. We do not touch anything here and go on. In metadata we also don't touch anything and press save. So now we have finished our program settings here. We configure this program once and never go back to these settings. Now let's go directly to the settings of our project, which is exactly what you can find in the lower right corner. Click on the gear and it opens the settings for our project. Let's go through the order. The main menu where you will often come back is timeline format. No matter what kind of material we have, which can be 4K or 8K, I prefer to work in Full HD here. This allows us not to load our system and work more comfortably in our project. In case you work on a weak notebook, for example, you can always set the resolution much lower, let's say 1280 by 720, which is 720p. Next, timeline frame rate. By default we will always work in 25 frames. In the video format menu we will set to 1080p by 25 frames. This is the video format to be output to our reference monitor. If you do not have a reference monitor you can skip this. Then we have setup, cache optimization and paths to those caches. We will return to these menus in the next lessons, but for now we will skip this point. Then for image scaling all settings are left by default. I would like to mention that input scaling is a menu we will cover in future lessons. But for now, leave everything as it is. For color management, in this case we will work in Color Science DaVinci Y RGB, Timeline Color Space Rec 709, Gamma 2.4 and Output Color Space Rec 709A. We will go over the color management in a future video as well. In the item lookup tables, leave everything as it is, but make sure to change the value in the menu 3D lookup table interpolation from trilinear to tetrahedral. This will allow the program to more accurately and correctly apply different LUTs. If you enjoy my work and travel videos, you can buy my LUTs from my website. Below we have two buttons. Open LUT folder allows us to open the folder with all the LUTs that are in DaVinci itself in case you want to load new LUTs. Then press update list and the list of your LUTs will be updated for the program and will be available. General options are basically left by default. Camera raw is a very useful tab that allows us to specify the default raw settings for a specific camera. And then next we have capture and playback, and all these features are left as it is. Subtitles, Fairlight, path mapping are also left as it is and untouched. Now we want to save all of our settings as a preset so that we don't have to go back to them. Press the three dots in the upper right corner and select save current settings as preset. Give a name to our preset and save it. And if we want these settings to be loaded by default in the menu with our preset, click set as default preset and confirm our action. So now we have configured our project at this point. There are many more things to go over, but I don't want to make the video too long, so I'll see you next week.